Hello and welcome to The Voluntarist. So I just watched an interview. It was from about 2 months ago of Jordan Peterson and Eric Weinstein, or Weinstein, one of those, having a discussion with each other on the Rubin show. Yeah, on the Rubin report. Yeah, Rubin report. I think that's accurate. So I thoroughly enjoyed that video. It will be linked below. The conversation was just immaculate, if that's even an adjective that can describe a conversation. But it was a wonderful experience to listen to those guys hash it out. One comment in the comment section, I think, summed it up very nicely. It was, and they actually discussed this in part in the video, probably why the comment was made. But it's almost like we got a window into a genuine back and forth between two, legitimate intellectuals that are experts in at least one field. I think they're experts in just in a few fields that they're able to discuss intelligently and have in-depth knowledge of the literature. Eric Weinstein was discussing his expertise in economics and how he dabbled in theoretical physics and mathematics and all this stuff. He's just wicked smart. To hear a genuine conversation between two intellectuals like that, as opposed to the kind of watered down, talking out the other side of your mouth kind of thing that is delivered to your average layperson through the media, whose job it is to relay what is of importance to us when scientists and experts on the cutting edge of research come up with, we're not getting the whole story, and it's often slanted ideologically or to support a particular political agenda. So being able to hear conversations like this is coming up for a massive gulp of fresh air after being trapped underwater for a very long time. So I really like this style of doing things. I've seen stuff like this before, but not quite on this level. I think Peterson and Weinstein, and this little network of people who aren't ideologically identical. Like they disagree with each other, but they can all agree on the importance of having the conversation. So like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Eric Weinstein, I think Brett Weinstein as well. I think they're brothers, and all these public intellectuals that get together and have these in-depth conversations with each other about things that they have some expertise in or are very knowledgeable about, and it's really cool. So that's not the point of this video. I actually took issue with one of the things that was discussed, and I just wanted to get a few thoughts into a video, just hash it out and get it out there, and I look forward to any comments that might appear in the comment section. Please comment if you have anything to say. If you think you might want to say something, but you're not going to comment, what are you doing? You're not participating in the conversation. Comment. So the thing that I took issue with, and I'll try to find it in the video, it's like 2 hours long, and between life things in my online class, I don't know. I'll try to find it. But so somewhere in the interview, Eric starts discussing how people are ideologically driven, and we have to start rooting out our biases and start listening to each other more and participating in conversations, and kind of this I believe it's like Rule 9 of Jordan's book. Assume that the person you're talking to may know something that you don't, and it's all along that general same line of reasoning. But Eric eventually, comes around to attack libertarianism. I'm like, oh no, here we go. So of course he goes to the most difficult thing, the most difficult thing about libertarianism to justify, and that's you shouldn't be able to force people to pay for goods, even public goods, or quote unquote public goods.
Every smart person I know is pro-market. The key question is, do you believe that the market should be allowed to do everything? Like you get these very purist things. Like I'm an Ayn Randy and I'm a guaranteed free marketeer. But then you put things in front of them and you say, look, should physics be allowed to sign a licensing deal where we charge you for everything we've created, like the semiconductor, or the communications equipment that you use to run your life? Because if you want to talk to me one more time about tax dollars for science, I'm going to point out to you that you're breaking a compact that we had, that you were going to support us and we weren't going to charge you. Because if we charge you, we're going to be the ones with the yachts and the fourth homes, and you're not going to be able to pay your physics bill. And the point of this is, when you welch on a contract and you start to say, no, it's the market. Well, guess what? Public goods are part of markets, and they're very valuable, and they're hard to get anyone to pay for them. And so you have to use some amount of violence. Right? Weber's theory is that a government is a monopoly on violence, and that's why it exists.
The Austrians are pretty sound on their explanations for how this could work economically, and just the very, very basic reasoning goes, is it important? Do people value it? If yes, people will pay for it. If not, if it's not important and people don't value it, why are you forcing people to pay for it? So it's kind of like along those lines as far as basic Austrian economics argument goes. If something is valuable and there's a demand for it, people will find a way to provide it at a profit, and that, like everything, like food and housing and water and all of these other things that are vitally necessary for human life to sustain itself. You don't see the government nationalizing water. You don't see, okay, well, they've got city water, but how do people outside the cities survive? They figure it out, and they're not bankrupt. So it's stuff like this, and if the government didn't deliver de jure monopolies to certain companies or itself, to secure these resources and secure sole rights to provide those resources on the market would find a way to provide these things. But Eric Weinstein moves on to this very, very frank, which I respect. I respect a lot. A lot of people will kind of say, we have to have government get people to pay for public goods, or else this, and this will happen. But Eric comes right out and says, it's difficult to get people to pay for public goods. Therefore, we need government, which is described as the monopoly on legitimate, quote unquote, legitimate violence in society, to force people to pay for the goods. So I respect him for actually stating the fact that the government is a monopoly on violence, and that is its utility. People use government to accomplish goals because people, for whatever reason, respect government's right to inflict violence and threaten fines and imprisonment and enforce those with violence. So it's very convenient to use force to just make people do what you want, because you don't have to convince them. Like McDonald's, they spend a lot of money on advertising and a lot of money figuring out how to make their foods full of sugar and salt to get people in there to buy it and make it taste good. But government is like, we have an idea and we think we know better than you, so we're going to force everyone to do it. Government, idea is so good, you have to force everyone to play along. So I was thinking how this kind of fits in with everything. The idea that you have this vision for how society should be, and you're so sure that you're correct, and you're so positive that this is the action that society should take, that you're willing to threaten people with violence, steal from them, and otherwise compel them to behave the way you say, or else. That to me is either you're really, really right, or that's a profound arrogance in my view. From my perspective, all right, it's twofold. One, it's arrogant to say that my idea for how society ought to run is so correct that it justifies me to threaten people with violence and imprisonment and make them do what I want. But secondly, it implies a lie. It implies something that is patently false. When you commit an act of violence against a peaceful person, and let's say in the context of government, to get them to do something, what that implies is that you have some right to do that to that person. In committing the act of violence, you're implying that you have the right to determine what action another individual should take for him or herself. Now, if the person you're being violent towards has been otherwise peaceful up until that point and has done nothing to forfeit their freedom from such aggressions, then we've got a problem here, because that person is deserving of this universalizable, universally preferable self-ownership, self-direction. They are de facto owners of their body, as are we all, and their ability to choose for themselves how to live their lives, as long as they aren't being violent toward others, that's something vital to their humanity. Otherwise, they're just some inanimate object or your slave to do your bidding as you instruct, or else. So when you commit an act of violence, like government does when forcing people to do what it wants, which Eric Weinstein is justifying with his defense of coercive government, is patently false. It is implying a lie. And that lie is that you own the other person. You have a right to control how they act and determine what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, and how. So that's patently false, which reminds me about Jordan Peterson's, I don't really know what to call it. It needs a name, like truth theory, or I'm sure that's probably something else already, but truth order theory, or something cool. I don't know. Come up with something in the comments. But the idea is that order that manifests from truth is good. And he's got this the way he likes to explain this idea is, or the way he likes to relate to the idea is, he discusses Genesis and how God spoke order into the cosmos with the Word, and the Word is the truth. So God spoke truth and saw that it was good. The order he created from his Word, the truth, was good. And so, mythologically speaking, which is kind of how Jordan does everything.
This is the deepest idea of mankind. It's developed in detail in Genesis, in the Old Testament. It's the fundamental idea of Genesis, that God uses the Logos, the Word of God, to cast potential, which we all face. That's what we face, potential, right? You know that. You know that. The future is unstructured. You have a potential within you that can meet that, and there's a potential that characterizes the future. You meet it with eyes open and with truthful speech. And that's what happens in Genesis, because God uses the Logos, which is truthful speech, to cast the pre-cosmogonic potential into habitable order. And then he says it's good. And there's a hint there, right? Because you think, well, is habitable order good? Because life is very difficult. And it's a real question whether or not the order that we inhabit is good. And the hypothesis in the Old Testament is that if truthful speech gives rise to the order, then that order will be good. And that's really something, man. Like, that's really something to apprehend. It's a fundamental theological presupposition.
And he backs it up with, like, neurological research and stuff like that. Like, if you read Maps of Meaning, there's a lot of good info in there. I believe there's even some in 12 Rules for Life. Of course, I just read that a little while ago. The point is, the reality that we create for ourselves when we focus on achieving the truth, speaking the truth, and perpetuating what we believe to be most accurate, yields good order. Likewise, if we perpetuate something that is false, or we do things that aren't really based on the truth, then the reality that results from that tends to be bad. And Jordan Peterson likes to point toward the just complete misunderstanding of human nature, that human nature is infinitely malleable. This belief held by the Marxist-Leninists, during, well, that phase in history of the 20th century that resulted in the death of nearly 100 million people. Yeah, so that's what we would consider to be hell. And it results from this mass perpetuation of lies that are told. So, with that said, it's important that when we identify an important truth like de facto self-ownership and the importance of self-ownership and being able to make your own decisions and be free to act as long as you're not impeding others' ability to act peacefully, then we need to protect that truth and not build political systems and not empower coercive government on the premise of something that is patently false, which is the idea that other people, or especially politicians, can force people to do what they want them to. So that is ultimately all I wanted to say in this video. So I'll link to the interview below, and I'll try to, if I didn't already insert it, I'll try to find the specific thing that Eric said. But otherwise, wonderful interview, and really thought-provoking. I definitely encourage everyone to watch it. And thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.